In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
What's your favorite curse word?
I can't say it. It starts with an M and it ends with not ER.
Hi, we're joined by Chloe Humbert, who's advocate, I would say, for people's voting rights, and she does a pandemic newsletter as well as a Substack, and you can see her on Chloe Humbert on YouTube. She's just joined. Hi, Chloe. How are you?
Hi.
Are you feeling okay? I guess you guys just had an election out there, eh? I'm north of you, so I don't know if you heard, but you've had an election. Of course you have heard.
Oh, yes. I live in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So can I just say right off the bat that the one relief right now is not having to see political ads everywhere, all the time, constantly, everywhere. Billboards, text messages, YouTube commercials, TV commercials, radio commercials. Did I mention billboards?
Was that the Democrats doing that, Chloe?
Both. Oh, both.
Both?
Yes, it's horrendous. When you live in a swing state, they really pour in the advertising so that it's just relentless.
Well, you were most certainly a swing state, and I can't say it swung for the Democrats at all. Just taking a look at these, let me bring this up. Whoops, here we go. So Donald Trump wins the presidential election. He's got 295, and Kamala got 226, the electoral votes. But this is the first time in history that Trump has won the popular vote as well.
Right. For Republicans, that's unusual.
It is, yeah.
I don't have an explanation for that, but I do know that the minute they said everything hinges on Pennsylvania, this was not unexpected. Not because I was sure that Pennsylvania would go to Trump, but because I just thought that that was a very bad sign, because obviously it did in retrospect. But even before that, it felt like a lot of burden to put on Pennsylvanians. And the Republicans really focus on Pennsylvania, and for good reason. There's very good reasons for that.
Well, the blue wall kind of came falling down, didn't it? Michigan and Wisconsin also went Republican.
Yes. Wisconsin, I was not too surprised about.
Really?
Michigan, I was a little bit surprised, but frankly, I thought I was worried that we might even have it be even worse. At some point on the night of the election, Virginia seemed kind of closer than it should have been. And there's apparently quite a bit of evidence that Harris lost Biden blue area, like blue states that, where Biden had gains, Harris lost more than the gains. I'm not sure how to explain that, but basically the red states were won by less than the blue states actually lost ground, which is 100%. Disturbing.
Well, 15 million less votes for Kamala versus Biden. So Donald Trump essentially outperformed. He did a little better, but he wouldn't have won with these numbers against Biden, because Biden had more of the popular vote. Let me bring up the Senate results, which was a little disappointing, I would say, if you're a Democrat. I thought the Dems were looking at trying to control the House, especially if Donald Trump was president. They didn't. Mitch McConnell is going to be the majority chair again. You know.
Is he still in it? Like, I don't even
Yeah,
know.
he's still. You'd figure he would retire, but
Huh.
no,
Yeah.
he
It's a
didn't.
mess. It's certainly a
And
mess. Bob Casey in Pennsylvania lost his race, and I can't tell you. He's been a senator for as long as I can remember, at
mhm.
least. So it's been quite a while.
The interesting part here is Michigan and Wisconsin stayed Democratic, unless they didn't have a Senate thing, but they're still blue. The
Yeah, I'm not
House,
quite sure.
yeah, I'm not either. I'm a Canadian. So. The House results. You need 218 for a majority. It's still out. This is current as of the last hour or so, and it seems to be you got a House representative in Pennsylvania. Uh,
Yes, we had a key race.
right.
Um, my congressman Matt Cartwright was considered a key race and was vulnerable.
Mhm.
So this is important, and I'd like to tell you about Matt Cartwright because I
I
think
would
it's
love.
important.
I would love to hear it.
So this is just a local person's. I'm his constituent,
We're all local.
and
This is what I like about doing the podcast is I real people who are affected by this stuff, and like we're not oligarchs or billionaires. You could be a millionaire for all I know. I don't care either. But how does this affect you? And
well,
go
I
ahead
don't
with
even
your
know
story.
yet. So we've been seeing tons of uh, ads for Rob Brezhnehan, which is Rob Brezhnehan is the guy who won the seat off of and flipped the seat from Matt Cartwright. And I know some of the attack ads said that he is, some kind of CEO. He inherited a business in his when he was a teenager. There was some ads like calling him the rich boy next door or something like that. I mean, I don't know. At least he wasn't a carpetbagger. We usually get carpetbaggers, and I think that might have been their key to actually like people voting for him. I don't think he was a carpetbagger, but we get lots of carpetbaggers. Of course, Dave McCormick, who won Bob Casey's seat, is a carpetbagger. I consider him a carpetbagger, and that's like that is a thing in Appalachia. If you talk to anybody in Appalachia, you'll hear about carpetbaggers. And the last guy, I think, ran against Matt Cartwright twice. He was, a transplant, and not to say that people can't move to the area and then run and be legitimate candidates, but they did have this, like Dave McCormick, has this, he's a hedge fund CEO from Connecticut, So I don't know much about Rob Brezhnehan. Of course, I'm going to find out before he takes office more. But I can tell you about I can tell you about Matt Cartwright because
Sure.
he's been my congressman for, I'm going to say, not since I moved to Scranton. When I first moved to Scranton, Lou Barletta was my congressman. Now, Lou Barletta was very famous for being the anti-immigration mayor of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and he
Mhm.
passed these local ordinances against immigrants. So he was a Republican. Uh, he was kind of, he was not. I don't know. He was far right, but he was an odd Republican, and that was because of the maps. So then I didn't move. Okay. I didn't move. I did move, but I moved within Scranton, but that's not, I still had him as my congressman. And then they changed the maps to try to I guess, ungerrymander it. So you've heard about gerrymandering where they
Oh, sure
make
have.
the maps. Yeah. So that whole thing. So they ungerrymandered it. And I wound up in Matt Cartwright's district. Now, I learned that I didn't vote for him the first time he ran. Just to be clear, I didn't live in his district at that point. But he ran against an incumbent Democrat who was, do they call them blue dogs or something? The
Yeah,
ones that are corporate Democrats,
Blue
maybe
Dogs.
like right, they're corporate Democrat. He was an entrenched Democrat that was gerrymandered into the position. It was a safe seat, and Matt Cartwright uh, unseated him in a primary, running to the left of him. So Matt Cartwright was running as a progressive. So, and he was legitimately a progressive. He's been in the progressive caucus the whole time that he's been in Congress. And he ran on Medicare for all, like a single payer health care. And he stuck to that. Like, I will say, he was always been good on healthcare issues, always good on Medicare issues. He's very popular with seniors because he's been very, very much into that. And I will give him credit for that. That is a serious thing. He's voted, I guess they introduce every session, they introduce the Medicare for All Act, and he has either co-signed it or voted for it. Like he's co-signed it every time. So that is what he read on. He stuck to that. He has stuck to that. However, he's had some issues over the years. So like at one point, and he came into Congress after Obamacare was passed. So I don't think he like actually voted one way or another with that, but he was one of the Democrats, of course, that was seeing Tea Party demonstrations again at his town halls and whatever when he first got in. And but he was pretty good on that. Other than this is the one thing that I remember him kind of going to bat for medical device manufacturers, which was a key issue in the ACA, the Obamacare ACA law, the Affordable Care Act. There was a provision to tax medical device manufacturers, and that's a rich industry. And so that bothered me. Now, I told all my friends, I'm like, make him stop at least saying that, because it's going to like undermine support, like it's going to undermine his base. So, I mean, I wrote and wrote. Finally, he did drop that. Like that did go away. Like he wasn't, if he still was into that, I suspect, and this is what happens a lot, is that a Democrat gets in, they're legitimately progressive, they look progressive, they're doing mostly progressive things, and Democratic voters, the constituents, get complacent. So if they're not constantly prodding the congressman, I think what happens is the congressman has all of these other people screaming in their ear, and they're human. They're susceptible to who's giving them donations and who's talking to them.
I think their world gets smaller, and they're out with the corporation types and the people pandering for the corporations,
And just the business leaders.
yeah, and with the fact that your Congress people got to fundraise so much money, although this did not help Camilla this time because she outspent Trump. I could see that happening where they get these fundraisers or these corporate types have the ear of the congressman all the time, right?
Yeah, well, and it's not even just the like corporations. That is a big problem. I'm not saying that, but what's
But
insidious,
and stuff.
right? Well, yes, there are those things, and and actually, as far as APAC is concerned, Matt Cartwright got a pittance compared to other Pennsylvania I mean, if you can look up how much all the congressmen, all the Congress people have gotten from something like APAC, and Matt Cartwright got a pittance compared to all these other people. So I wouldn't actually consider that to be a big factor with Matt Cartwright. I don't think I have no reason to believe that Rob Bresnahan was particularly like that was a key issue with this. I don't know. And I could say that like you'd have to look elsewhere for information on that. I did not see it being a big thing in any ads or anything local or anything. I do know that he was quiet on the issue of Gaza. Okay. So and I do have friends in my district who were frustrated calling his office when they wouldn't say, they wouldn't make a comment one way or another, I think, about that. So there is that. I can't explain that, and I don't know what his views are on that, because I did
Fair.
call too, right? So I can't say how big of an issue that is. However, for the past 2 years, he's been running to the right in a lot of ways. And I subscribe to his newsletter, which comes out, I think, once a month, might be more than that. I'm not sure. It's well done, and he has done a lot of good for this area. I just want to make that clear. He has done a lot of good. He's been on the right side of a lot of issues. He's gotten help for, veterans, for people who have coal miner, like black lung issues, a lot of this stuff he's done very good on. But at the top of every newsletter is always how much he's getting for the police. Now, there's not a big defund the police movement here, and there isn't and I'm sure that there's plenty of progressive Democrats who want the police funded. That's not the issue. Okay, so I'm not talking this isn't an issue of defund the police or fund the police. It just seemed odd that why he was making that his primary issue every newsletter. That's, first of all, I'd rather other things fund it more than the police personally, but that's my thing. Okay. And I found it a little bit disturbing, mostly on an issue of, I guess, and some people will say, well, that's tribalism, Chloe, or something like that. But it is true that the police, the law enforcement, the corrections officers, all of these people that he went along with, taking away mail from prisoners, that whole thing, all of that is all right wing, and it's all bullshit too. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't make people pay in prison to go see a letter from their kid, on a screen. In Pennsylvania, they ship letters from children to prisoners. They ship it to Florida, so some company in Florida gets paid to scan in the stuff, and then the prisoners, I think, have to pay for time on a computer to view it. That's just, and it's
you guys have monetized everything, eh?
right. Exactly. So all of this stuff, it just seemed like Matt Cartwright was drinking the misinformation of the right-wing law enforcement. I'm not saying all law enforcement is right-wing, just to be clear. But I'm saying that it just seemed like those narratives in the right wing, in law enforcement, were seeping into Matt Cartwright, progressive congressman's platform. My theory for this, and I don't really have too much inside information on this, but I have talked to people who have known staffers or have been staffers at, to be able to surmise that one of the things is, I think the corrections unions and the, police unions have been lobbying our congressman. And I do think that this is a key problem where Democratic constituents, I'm talking about registered Democrat voters, kind of have this idea that they don't need to push their congressman to do the right thing. And I'm of the mind that, no, you need to write to and it works both ways too. They'll say, well, my congressman, I don't have to write letters to my congressman. I don't have to call my congressman and push him because he's going to do the right thing because he's a progressive. Or worse, they'll say, well, my congressman is a Republican, so I'm not going to move him on anything anyway, so I'm not going to write. So then that ends up being a cycle of silence, which means that these Congress people, whether they be Republican or Democrat, wind up just listening to the people who lobby them. And who is lobbying them? The police union. Who's lobbying them? The business, leaders. Now, I am not giving these politicians a pass. Obviously, I think a big part of the problem is that Democrats kind of, and I have a meme I'll send you. I think I did send it to you already, but I have a meme that, with how Republicans, it's the distracted boyfriend meme. And, and basically, they're chasing after right-wing votes, and they're going to cater to those people, but those people are not going to vote for him anyway. I'm not saying no Republicans voted for Matt Cartwright, because that's not true. Many did, I'm sure, and I'm sure they still did, and even with him losing, I'm sure that there are quite a few conservatives who voted for Matt Cartwright in all of his elections. I do believe that. Is it enough, though? Is that who he should be catering to? I just don't think that that's the case. Like, it feels like a slap in the face because those people are still, if given a choice between Matt Cartwright and the carpetbagger, maybe they will choose Matt Cartwright because he's listened to them and they think, oh, this outsider's come in. Maybe. But if there's a legitimate, like, right-wing Republican running to the right wasn't the right answer there, because why vote for Matt Cartwright when you have the actual real deal Republican to vote for? And then I think it did kind of, depress some enthusiasm for his campaign. That's a real thing.
Well, that's part of the theory of the case for Camilla losing was she went after Republican women instead of, going more to her base on the progressive side.
Yes, I do think that that's an issue. I think that they ran to the right on a lot of stuff. She didn't start out that way. That's the thing. And legitimately, I did not vote for Biden in the primary. Okay, I did not vote for him in the first primary, I will say. I don't even remember what the second primary. Yeah, no, I didn't vote for him in any primary because I did I left it blank, in the primary the first time. In the first, or this past time, and the first time I believe I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary, even though it was a lost cause by that point. I still I did vote for Joe Biden in 2020 because I see voting as a strategic issue where you're voting for your preferred adversary.
Right.
I was extremely disappointed with Biden abandoning his excellent pandemic plans. He had an excellent pandemic plans and he just folded like a cheap lawn chair on all of it. Obviously there was Republican pushing, the whole anti-mitigation, anti-vax, anti-mask, all of that lockdown BS and the trucker convoys and whatnot. But he did cave on that.
Right. And he got blamed for a lot of that too. Yet Trump, he was just horrendous on the topic and it got passed over to Joe Biden. And he did, he made some strides, improvement on the government's response. And then, like you said, he just let it slide, I guess, right?
Right. So what people remember what happens last, and
Yes, they
propaganda
do.
campaigns can really, so it's easy to memory hole how bad Trump was. Whereas the people who were really sidelined and, as Dr. Fauci had said, have now been shoved to the wayside or gone by the wayside, that's really hurt a lot of people in the disability community, the immunocompromised, the high risk, the people who have long COVID. That has really demoralized people. And so it's hard to go to those people and say, well, but Trump was worse. And then say, well, Biden did make, let's be honest. And I will say this, is that I'm not saying this because it's Scranton Joe, and but Joe Biden is from Scranton, and he has legitimately catered to us, I guess you'd say. He's come here a lot, and we have 2 streets named after him now, President Joe Biden in Scranton. And but I will say, not my first choice, not happy with a lot of it, but the NLRB decisions have been really good. He's possibly the most progressive president we ever had, and since FDR or whatever, and as far as the labor situation goes. And then also the FTC with Lena Khan and the anti-monopoly, stuff is actually very, very good. But it's hard to go to people who've been, pummeled with, first of all, the information, the propaganda online. And one of the strategic things that I don't think people appreciate is that the right wing went after lefties to undermine support for Harris, Biden, and then Harris, and any, Democrat who is running, basically.
Right. They were
So there
calling them
has been.
socialists as, thinking that's a bad word, but Biden and Camilla are nowhere near socialist. They could be
No, they're
progressive on
not.
some issues.
But what I
And
mean
the
is
wordplay from the people on the right and the podcasters That's affected a lot of people.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
towards their vote.
That's true too, but there's also the other end of it where
Okay.
the right wing actually targeted. I heard, I want to say this was on the Bulwark podcast, which I listened to because, I mean, I would say they're never Trumpers. They're Republican, maybe liberal centrists or whatever. But I do keep tabs on a wide range of, media on the left, on the broad left, basically on anyone left of Trump, which is, pretty big. But on the the Bulwark podcast had Mehdi Hassan on recently, and they played a clip where and I don't know who it is. I'm sorry. I could look it up, but they played a clip where they were talking to lefties and progressives, maybe Muslims, I'm not sure, but basically progressives in Michigan. And they recounted these ads they were seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And the ads depicted, quite frankly, they were anti-Semitic. They depicted Kamala Harris's husband as this like raging Zionist, which I have no idea. I'm gonna just assume that they were overblowing that, if that was even the case at all.
I would suggest it's overblown. He is Jewish and stuff.
Right.
A pretty low profile.
Right. It just
and
seemed
for
very,
life. Yeah.
yes, overblown at a minimum, and it did seem. And here's the background between that. Like, these lefties were saying, see, her husband, this and that. And even in the clip, they said, well, did you think that maybe that was a Republicans targeting you? And they said, yeah, maybe. And I happen to know that, even before I heard this on the podcast, I already knew that Elon Musk was known to fund a super PAC. And the 404 media actually reported on this weeks ago. What happened is that this super PAC actually put out targeted ads. They targeted, I guess, what you would call like areas that had large demographics of Muslim in Michigan, with these ads that was painting Kamala Harris's husband as this raging Zionist extremist. Okay. So they targeted those people. This was an Elon Musk funded super PAC
that's exactly what Facebook and YouTube and these marketers do, is they do these targeted ads. So they.
Right. And in Pennsylvania.
Pardon me?
Oh, yes. In Pennsylvania, they did the same super PAC, put out ads in Pennsylvania, targeting Jewish areas, and painting Kamala Harris as this pro-Hamas connected kind of, like, you get what I'm saying.
I do. And in Michigan, it worked. I think it was 65% of Muslim men in Detroit or Michigan voted for Trump.
Right. Even though Trump said he wants Netanyahu to finish the job, or whatever he said, allegedly.
You would think, if a person was thinking about it, that Camilla would be better for Palestine than Trump, because Trump's pretty.
Well, of course, that's.
Him and Netanyahu are buddies, right? So.
Right. It's objectively true, but people are going on. It's hard to tell, and I actually I will recommend the Mehdi Hassan interview on the Bulwark, is because he does explain how hard it is to tell people who are losing family members in Lebanon, to it is a tough subject. It's a tough subject, and I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong thing that anybody did, but the fact is that there were these dishonest ads. There were these dishonest ads by a right-wing thing, and people fell for it, and there wasn't enough to counter it. That is objectively true. And it's a failure. But also, Matt Cartwright, we'll get back to Matt Cartwright, is that he had some ads. Yeah, because he had some ads that were unappealing. Now, this wouldn't have changed my vote. Okay, because, obviously it's the lesser of two evils all the time, right? This wouldn't have
Right.
changed my vote, but it couldn't have changed my vote because I voted by mail weeks before the election, like just to make sure it would go in. So my vote was like my ballot was received by the election office at the beginning of October, like almost a full month before the election. So
Right.
that was done. But anyway, it would not have changed my vote. But he had a very xenophobic uh, ad the last week of the election that compared his funding. He voted to fund the Trump wall. Okay, and he voted to fund the Trump wall. Now you could get into the weeds about what he was actually his stand is, but he did a commercial that showed him in front of a local flood wall and compared the border wall to that. And I think that it's dehumanizing. It vibed wrong. It was just seemed bad. And in the commercial, he was also wearing like a little like a shirt that was like it was related to a police officer who had died a few years back. So I don't know. It had all the bells and whistles. I think what they were going for is to try to,
Hmm.
get those Republicans, but that was never going to happen because and I'll just tell you that the opposition, there was an attack ad. It wasn't I don't believe it was like just to be clear, it was not probably not a Rob Bresnahan ad. It was probably just an attack ad from some
Some
pack
pack.
or some right, yes. I don't remember the details, but the guy
Fair
on it
enough. Yeah.
would say, and this was a complete lie, he said, my retirement plan, it's to move to Mexico, renounce my citizenship, and then sneak back over the border, and Matt Cartwright will give me everything for free. And of course, that isn't how things work. It is just such misinformation. But a
Especially
lot of
Pennsylvania being so far away from the border.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh my God.
Yes, it just seems so. But if you repeat that nonsense
It gets
enough,
stuck in people's heads, and when they go to the voting thing, that's the last thing they're thinking about. Eh?
yes,
Mm.
yes. I mean, sadly, a lot of Democrats in my area have those misconceptions. And I can say that, like, they are misconceptions. Even people who ought to know better because they, they know that they might work in fields where, like, in the government, where they should know that you can't get everything for free if you're undocumented. You can't get hardly anything if you're undocumented.
That's true. So, which brings me to a point is why do people vote against their own best interests? We see it time and time again. People in the South, some southern states, not voting for. They didn't want free Medicare because they don't want free health care, I guess. That sort of thing. And in this case, too, people listening to these pack ads and stuff were influenced by it. The advertising sure as heck works. Um,
Well, now I think that's a little bit more complicated, and I'm not
okay,
going
well,
to
we don't have to
I'm
get into that much. I
I'm
just
not
wanted to point that out. I think a lot of
yeah,
people vote against their best interests based
it
on
does
the
seem that way, but I think
right.
from their point of view, it doesn't feel that way. And I think that that's the big difference is that we're looking at it from like some kind of antiseptic view, whereas they're hearing different things. And unless you get into those like to know what people are hearing and seeing and how they're processing this information, and a lot of times it's disinformation and there's
Mhm.
actual operations to do this. But I think one of the things is that as far as the economic thing goes, has the economy improved? Yes. Like this is objectively true that the United States economy improved under Biden generally.
Mhm.
But but and here's an interesting thing is that I have been hounding and I write letters to my representatives constantly. So they're hearing from me a lot. And this was something that I wrote to Matt Cartwright about a lot. And in the beginning, he was actually making commercials that really spoke to that. Like one of his first commercials, if several months ago, was him at a town hall saying, listen, I hear you. People are hurting all over this nation and I want to do better for, and that was the right message, I think. I think that was the right message, that people are hurting. It doesn't matter whether the economy is better. Like,
Well,
that is
you're
not a
talking
selling
to
point.
people. You're talking to people then.
Right.
Something that resonates, right?
Saying the economy better doesn't rev people up to think, oh, yeah,
Okay.
okay, I want to vote for you. No, telling them that you're going to help improve their situation, whatever it is, there
Mhm.
is such a thing as like a relative financial situation. And I've heard other people talk about this, is that, people who were, maybe doing better a few years ago, it could be because of the pandemic. I know that my personal situation, because of my situation, I was basically forced into retirement because of the pandemic. And there's a lot of people who haven't done as well because they've been high risk or because they've gotten long COVID. And this is a serious issue. So when
It
you're
is.
talking about this, you're talking to those people. So I'm not saying that that's the majority of people. I don't know what percentage that is, but it's significant enough that market researchers do research on this. People who are still not engaging fully in the economy. So that
Right.
it is noticeable. So then you've got
And
that.
also coming out of the pandemic, the inflation went up. So your buying power, even if you made a few cents more per hour, your buying power went down, even if the economy
Right.
was good, right? And people
Right.
felt that, it's like Welcome to America, 12 to a Room in America from West Side Story. Uh,
Yeah. So there
and
are
that,
people who are seriously have been harmed. But here's the thing, is that even if you set that aside and you say that it's just, there are a lot of people who are still doing well, even if it's just a matter of them having to say no to one thing that they used to do because of financial,
mhm.
that you can't tell people it's everything's great if that's what they're doing. And I feel like that was kind of shoved. I feel like they I feel like they shoved it at you and made you say you have to say the economy's good
Right.
instead of trying to use like what the right wing does very well is heuristics,
Mhm.
where they lead you to a conclusion. They give you sound bites and breadcrumbs and lead you to conclusions without ever even saying it, right?
They're eating the cats is
Oh
one comes to
gosh,
mind.
the eating the pets thing. That's another thing is that there are that's one of the things that I actually have on my list of like economy issues that people overlook is the economy good when venture capitalists have taken over all of the veterinarians in the United States? And I'll just tell you, I sadly lost a pet this year,
I'm sorry.
um, a beloved cat. And we found when he got sick, we found that in order to go to an animal hospital, I live in Scranton. This is a city. It's not a big city, but it's a city.
Hmm.
We had to drive 40 minutes to go to an animal hospital with an ER with after hour, like that even has after hours, like thing. And then another time we had to drive an hour and a half to Allentown to
Oh
go to an
wow.
animal hospital with that even had like a cardiac, like, and this is, and I'm speaking from a point of privilege. Okay. So like, that I had the means to actually travel an hour and a half and,
Hmm.
the money to pay up front, with, on
Oh,
a
I hear
credit
you.
card
I hear you.
of
Yeah.
for veterinary services. Okay. So imagine that though, when this is what put me in. I'm like, wow, this is really expensive. And wow, why isn't there any place in Scranton? There used to be animal hospitals everywhere,
Hmm.
And I looked into it, and venture capitalists have basically, it's been taking over by that, investment stuff. And it's causing a problem. Those are the kind of things that people notice in their day-to-day lives. Maybe not everybody notices, but you can't say the economy is good when you can't get a vet local.
It's a
You
good
can't get
point.
an appointment within a reasonable time. I mean, luckily we've been with the same veterinarian clinic for a number of years. So I think we got sooner appointments than with the local vet. But this is a serious problem. The other problem is like with the jobs. I mean, have you heard about ghost job ads? That's a thing.
Ghost
The return
job
to,
ads.
yeah, ghost job ads. Yeah, that is a whole other rabbit hole you can go down.
Is that for immigrants or?
No, it's basically they put out job ads to intimidate their current employees to make it look like the place is booming, but it's not. And they just ghost the applicants. They're not real jobs. They're not real jobs. Yeah, so we've got that. Then you've got, the gig economy precariousness. That's a real thing. The return to office mandates, these are all economic issues that people have a problem with. And I'll tell you, during the Trump administration, my Democratic politician representatives were on the side of the workers with remote work being an
Mm-hmm.
option.
Mm-hmm.
The minute Biden got into office, suddenly they were pushing butts and seats downtown for the economy. This is a real
Ridiculous.
thing.
It's ridiculous.
Right. So,
Well,
like,
even working from home, it decreases pollution. You don't have to spend as much on gas or miles on your car for maintenance.
right.
It's
So the fossil fuel companies don't like it.
well, that's true. Maybe tire manufacturers as well. And
Right. And
we know
commercial,
the restaurants downtown don't like it either, do they?
right. Exactly. The commercial real estate,
Hmm.
loses from work from home. The fossil fuel industry loses the car. And yes, so it's a whole industry thing. It's not about people or what's best for the environment or what's best for people or what
Right.
helps disabled people stay in the workforce. Not
Hmm.
about that. So what I'm saying is that they, instead of actually doing things to revitalize the downtown, like making it more livable,
Hmm.
they're trying to force activity in the downtown by forcing people to go to work downtown. That's not how it works. Meanwhile, here in Scranton, there was a debacle some months ago, and I wrote about it on my Substack. Is that there was, and I heard that the real estate mogul who took over the theater downtown, he had this huge marquee and was keeping it lit up late into the night. And the people who lived downtown were complaining about it because they weren't getting to sleep. They were having to like buy block out and these are rentals, so
Hmm.
it's like stuff like that. It is,
I I hear
it's,
you.
it seems like if they just took the side of the people,
Hmm.
it would be an obvious choices, but instead they run to the business.
Well, is that why people kind of voted Republican? They're just so fed up. They don't feel the
I
economic, um, you know, riches coming their way, and they just want to blow up the system. Or do they think the Republicans are actually talking to them?
both. I think it's both. I do
Okay.
think that like that there are I think it's I think it's both. So I think it's both that Republicans, politicians lie
Right.
and tell them. I mean, let's put it this way. Back in 2015 or 2016, Trump said he was going to bring Australian style healthcare. That's what people I know heard.
Hmm.
He did say
Hmm.
something like that. So that's not
The bestest health care ever, he said.
right. Well, that's the thing is that uh, y- it doesn't matter that it's a lie. He said it, right?
Hmm.
Some people
Hmm.
believed it. And then the other thing is that I do believe that a lot of it is about turnout. And uh, listen, I am not recommending Rachel Bittkoffer. I think she's pretty famous for being kind of a jerk online to
Oh,
lefties.
is she a YouTube personality or
Well,
podcast?
she's a political analyst, but she did do an analysis, like, and I think it was true that showed that there are more people. There are more. It's more about who stays home and who goes out to vote than it is about swing voters.
Well, 15 million people did not bother to vote, but they voted for Biden. So.
Right. So I do believe that her analysis was correct. And I have long believed that before that. It's about getting out the vote. And I've heard many people say that it's about that, is that if you can, and that requires, like, you have to have an impetus, you have to have a catalyst, you have to have people
Mhm.
who are, making the effort, because it's not
Inspired.
easy to vote. It's not easy to vote in the United States. It's just not. I don't
Well,
know what it's like in
I've seen the
Canada,
long
but
lineups too, and some places, and I'd hate to have to spend 8 hours a day just trying to get in and vote as well. Some of these
yes.
states do not make it easy to vote.
And let's put it this way. And this is something that I think it's very important. And I wish more people would recognize, because I keep seeing this and hearing this on the broad left. And when I say the broad left, I mean, I've heard this repeated on the Bulwark podcast, which is, like I said, a never Trumper Republican.
Mhm.
I've heard it on the Bulwark podcast, and I've heard it on lefty pundit podcasts, like, pretty farther left people and everything in between. And they keep saying, but Trump didn't have any ground game. Trump didn't have any ground game. He had Elon Musk doing this, I guess a half-ass canvassing thing with people who were underpaid and mistreated. And I'm saying that did happen. I'm not saying that didn't happen. But I'm saying that anybody who tells you that Trump and the Republicans didn't have a ground game, that's not true. Not true. Because General Mike Flynn, and those people have been doing tours.
Mhm.
They have been coming to the Scranton area and the Poconos over and over again. What's that? That's a ground game. Trump has had rally after rally. He didn't just have a rally in Butler when somebody took a shot at him. He went back to Butler, which
You did.
that, you know, just as somebody who, openly I have PTSD myself, so
Mhm. Yeah.
that was, that I do think figures into some of that, is that, like, people were mad when Hillary Clinton didn't come here
Yeah.
in
Yeah. No,
2016.
that was horrendous. Also, from what I heard, more Republicans did early voting and mail-in ballots than ever before.
Okay, so for
That's part of your
months, and I
ground
would,
game right there. Yeah.
well, here's the thing. Whatever they say, Republicans have crapped all over mail-in voting, and they flip-flop back and forth.
Hmm.
But a few months ago, Mastriano, the insurrectionist, candidate for governor. He's a state senator who ran for governor against Josh Shapiro and lost. And
Okay, in
he,
Pennsylvania.
yes, and he came out in favor of mail ballot voting. Okay, so he was, before the pandemic, he was for mail ballot voting. Then during the pandemic, he was against mail ballot voting, and now he's for mail ballot voting again. So but I just want to say is that I don't think people outside of Pennsylvania might not realize this, but we were hammered with campaign ads from Trump and Republicans and attack ads against Harris, first Biden and then Harris, because this has been going on for months, telling Republicans, get your mail ballot. They had, in one ad, Trump was at a rally somewhere saying, and in Pennsylvania, get your mail ballots to vote for Trump. This was Trump saying this in an ad. These ads were running nonstop in Pennsylvania for months leading up to the election. So
Mhm.
we're going back as far as, I want to say, the spring, because in Pennsylvania, what happens is that you request mail ballots once for the year, and then they send them to you for both the primary and then the general election. So you request
Okay.
a mail ballot once. That is how it happens. You have to request it every year. They send you the information. You can register online too, but that is how it works. And just even before the primary, they started these ads, and they were definitely targeting Republicans. They weren't targeting me. Let's put it that way. I know they weren't targeting Democrats. They were targeting Republicans and saying, get your mail ballots,
Mhm.
because it's true that seniors tend to vote conservative. That is, it hasn't been, wasn't true this time. I don't think that was, but it is generally that seniors do vote more and they do tend to be more conservative. And
Mhm.
they're also people who aren't going to want to stand in line. They're the people who want to avoid COVID and flu in November.
You got that
You know,
right.
they're people who, right. You know, they're people who want to avoid getting sick. They want to avoid crowds and they want to avoid having to stand in line with their, because usually by the time you're a senior, you're having issues that make standing in line could be painful.
I got you.
Yeah.
Just to come around back. So your congressman, he with his so he lost the election, right? And the Republican
Yes.
won. Yeah. And what
Hmm.
was his name? What was the
Matt
name?
Cartwright.
Matt Cartwright. Um, and it sounds like with everything that Pennsylvania, the advertising you were inundated to with, and the smart play by the Republicans, like get your mail-in vote, that probably led to him losing, as well as maybe
Yes. And getting out
him
the
going
vote.
too much right. Yeah, and getting out the vote.
They were, that like I'm in northeastern Pennsylvania, there's the Rod of Iron, like the Rod of Iron cult. It's the Sons of the Moonies and they own this gun, like the gun warehouse and whatever, and they have constant, like, this is like a ground that, if not, that's not a ground game. These are social connections.
Hmm.
These are ties. These are strong ties. So it's word of mouth. And we even had people who, let's put it this way, we even had people we know trying to tell us that Bob Casey wasn't good. Like, word of mouth matters when people, that wouldn't have swayed me.
Hmm.
That wouldn't have swayed anybody in my family, but that happened. They were probably being told to do that. Like, go to your friends and family and tell them to vote for Dave McCormick. And that makes a big difference when you have people who are willing to go out there and make that one-on-one connection. And that's a big deal. I could
That's what
tell
does
you,
it. Yeah.
I asked twice for Cartwright signs. They ignored me. I never got my Cartwright sign. We actually did pull out the Cartwright sign from 2 years ago and put it on the lawn.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's a big thing.
So, just to wind things up, what are your thoughts? Do you think the Democrat needs rebranding, or do you think it's dead? Is there going to be a new party, or are you guys just going to keep working? What are your plans for that? What's your hope, your promise
I
that you're looking?
think that we have to, I don't think it's about messaging. I don't think it's about rebranding. I think it's a fundamental issue that, and I think this is already happening. We see this with like candidates like Summer Lee, who in Pennsylvania, who, had overcome quite a bit, and these people come and go. These people come and go, but there are people like that willing to run. And that's who we need to back. We need to back people who are running on working class, representing the people over, people over profits.
Hmm.
Uh, and there are those people that exist. However, I am of the mind, and I think it's Sam Cedar who says this on the Majority Report quite a bit. He's said it many times. You're not voting for your Messiah. You're voting for your preferred opposition, your preferred adversary. You're voting, and I do see it that way. And I do believe, and I keep harping on this, and I will keep harping on this, is that you have to keep up the pressure. Politics is not a crock pot. You can't set it and forget it. You're never going to get the perfect candidate who gets into power and then does the right thing just automatically. There's some research by, I think his name is Brian Klaas, Klaas, and he's written about the neuroscience of how power changes people. It's just, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with imperfect people being put in positions of power, and we need civilian oversight, I guess, is what we need. And my hope is that more people step up, and instead of hoping that Mueller will save us, or Merrick Garland would save us, or Biden would save us, or
Bernie
Harris will
2028.
save
Yeah.
it. Right. And I'm not saying that these people aren't there aren't decent people.
Yes.
I'm not saying that, but my hope is that we get our act together like the right wingers have their shit together, obviously.
Fair enough. Chloe, thank you so much. That was a fascinating discussion. I hope we can do this again.
Thank
Um,
you.
what's your Substack name?
It's just Chloe Humbert.
Okay.
And you could find me at chloehumbert.com.
Okay. We're going to put that in the show notes. And thank you so much. And best of luck to you, and especially in Pennsylvania.
Thanks. Thank you. And best of luck to Canada to avoid our mistakes.